Amid the muted twilight of ancient Japan, where the distant ringing of temple bells mixed with the soft rustle of silk sliding across wooden floors, there existed a craft of combat that seemed almost invisible beside the brilliance of the sword, yet those who encountered it felt its silent power as vividly as the whisper of death itself. In narrow streets lined with lanterns and guarded by shadows that trembled in the wind, a man trained with a weapon that looked deceptively simple, a length of iron links, cold to the touch, pliant in the hand, light enough to be carried unnoticed, yet heavy enough to shift the balance of any encounter. This chain, forged from the commonplace and transformed into a disciplined extension of the warrior's will, belonged to the hidden branch of bujutsu, arts born not from the desire to strike down an enemy, but from the need to shield life from reckless steel. Masters of this discipline understood that force alone could never rule the outcome of a duel, and so they sought to turn flexibility into defense, rhythm into control, and subtlety into strength, guiding the chain's arc with such precision that it seemed alive, responding to intent before the muscles themselves acted. In the hands of a practitioner, the chain carved shapes in the air that resembled drifting smoke, only to snap tight with the weight of iron and halt the advance of even the sharpest katana. Its movement blurred the line between weapon and dance, for each strike flowed into a curve, each curve into an interception, and every interception into a moment where a swordsman's certainty faltered. The chain did not oppose the sword through resistance. Instead, it swallowed its momentum, redirected its path, and smothered its purpose. Such an art demanded more than technique. It required the inner stillness to anticipate danger before it appeared, to sense threads of intention woven into an opponent's stance, and to respond with a calmness so pure it bordered on the unnatural. Yet even this serene mastery hid a deeper paradox, for the chain could protect only those who understood how easily it could destroy, and those who insisted on killing with it found it slipping from their control, becoming a wild thing unfit for cruelty. As warriors refined their skill in dim dojos, listening to the iron murmur as it spun between their fingers, they realized that this unassuming instrument could tame the very essence of the sword, outwitting it not with strength, but with a patient intelligence that defied straightforward combat. The chain taught humility, reminding its wielder that mastery came not from domination, but from harmony, a balance between yielding and guiding, evading and constraining, never allowing aggression to dictate the flow of movement. And just as the final coil settled around a wooden practice blade, leaving the swordsman frozen mid-strike, a deeper question emerged, one that echoed across generations of warriors. If such a fragile thread of metal could confound even the proudest samurai blade, what other hidden tools awaited discovery in the shadows of Japan's martial world, ready to reveal that true power often lay far from the path illuminated by steel? In the quiet villages of medieval Japan, where farmers bent over rice paddies from dawn until the last dimming of the sky, few could imagine that the humble sickle resting against a wall would one day stand beside the sword in the chronicles of war. Yet from this tool of harvest, weathered by seasons of labor, emerged the kusarigama, an unlikely union of a curved blade and a metal chain that reshaped the very language of combat. In the hands of those who first practiced its art, this strange weapon commanded an aura of both elegance and terror, for it demanded from its wielder not brute strength, but a harmony of calculation and instinct, a deep understanding that victory could be found in misdirection rather than force. When the chain unfurled, glinting under the lantern light, it did not seek to wound. Instead, it circled, danced, whispered through the air with a fluidity that unsettled any opponent holding a rigid blade, because the stillness of the sword could not predict the living, spiraling motion of the chain. As its technique spread, warriors learned that the chain served not merely as an extension of reach, but as a weapon of control, its iron weight describing arcs that disoriented even experienced swordsmen, forcing them to retreat into unfamiliar rhythms. The spinning load could entangle a spear, strike the wrist that held a blade, or whirl so unpredictably that the opponent hesitated, unwilling to expose a path for the sickle that lingered quietly in the other hand. When that moment of hesitation arrived, the sickle moved with a precision born from necessity, cutting not out of savagery, but as the end of a sequence guided by patience. It was a style that taught restraint before aggression, inviting its practitioner to win the battle long before the final blow. Thus, the kusarigama became a symbol of a philosophy in which intellect outmaneuvered violence and perception overcame might. Among the many legends surrounding this art, one name echoed with unusual clarity: Yamada Shin-Yukan, a master whose skill captivated warriors and terrified swordsmen who sought to test their resolve. With his kusarigama, he defeated countless challengers, each duel shaped by the calm confidence with which he set the chain into motion. Observers often spoke of the sound it made, a faint, rhythmic pulse, almost like a heartbeat, that quickened just before the sickle struck. Yet even he met a fate that revealed the peril hidden within mastery. Cornered in a narrow corridor, Shin-Ryukan found the confines too tight to spin his chain, the weapon that had defined his life suddenly rendered powerless by the simple shape of a wall. In that instant, the art that had elevated him also betrayed him, proving that every strength bore within it a silent vulnerability. Still, the essence of the kusarigama endured, not as a relic of death, but as a testament to the triumph of ingenuity over brute force. Those who studied its movements learned to value adaptability, to see beyond appearances, and to recognize that even the most unassuming object could become a guardian in skilled hands. And as dusk settled over training grounds where chains swirled like silver threads against the fading sky, one pressing question stirred in the hearts of warriors. If a farm tool could defy the might of a samurai sword, what power lay concealed within the even smaller, humbler chains that were yet to emerge in Japan's evolving martial tradition? In the hushed corridors of Edo's night watch, where the soft glow of candlelight painted wavering silhouettes across tatami mats and distant footsteps echoed with disciplined regularity, a new weapon emerged, one so unassuming that few passing through the city streets would have recognized its deadly versatility. Created by the master Masaki Toshimitsu, the manriki-gusari appeared to be nothing more than a short metal chain ending in two compact weights, easily concealed in a sleeve or tied discreetly at the waist. Yet once placed in trained hands, these links displayed a force that belied their modest shape, striking with the precision of a blade and the subtlety of a whisper. Toshimitsu's innovation did not seek spectacle. Instead, it offered an instrument capable of resolving conflict without spilling blood, an art of restraint crafted for a society striving to maintain order beneath the fragile peace of the Tokugawa shogunate. The chain's movements blended silence with sudden impact. When a swordsman raised his blade in anger, the manriki-gusari traveled in a swift circular arc that disrupted focus before metal even met metal. The weights spun through the air with a muted whistle, a sound that carried both warning and inevitability. A single turn of the wrist could redirect the force of an attack, entangle a weapon's handle, or snap against an opponent's limb with a sharp thud that dissolved resistance instantly. In skilled practice halls, instructors emphasized that the chain was not a rival to the sword, but its counterpoint, absorbing aggression rather than amplifying it. Its mastery required precision more than strength, clarity of mind more than ferocity, letting each movement unfurl from the stillness that preceded it, as if the chain itself waited for the exact moment to reveal its stored potential. This quiet, controlled lethality made the manriki-gusari indispensable to Edo-period police forces, who patrolled bustling districts where disputes erupted suddenly amid crowds of merchants, gamblers, and travelers.
A sword drawn in such a place threatened chaos, yet a chain slipping swiftly through the air subdued its target with minimal harm, preserving dignity even in apprehension. The image of a city officer stopping a violent outburst with a single looping movement became emblematic of an era where governance relied not on overwhelming might, but on swift, decisive intervention performed with dignity. Witnesses often recalled how an unruly brawler would freeze the moment the weight touched his wrist or ankle, as if the cold iron had pinned not only his body, but his anger itself. Masaki Toshimitsu's creation inspired generations of martial artists who viewed the chain as a test of mental discipline. They practiced in courtyards where lanterns flickered against wooden pillars, sending long shadows that danced in time with the swinging links. Each exercise offered a reminder that true mastery did not shout. It revealed itself through precision that left no room for unnecessary motion. The chain's philosophy echoed through every lesson. Control is stronger than destruction, and the warrior who can end violence without drawing blood carries a power greater than any blade could offer. Yet, as students tightened their grip on the metal weights and listened to the faint clinking of the links, a question lingered, subtle but persistent. If such a simple tool could command such authority, what other hidden instruments, born from ordinary life, lay waiting in the hands of peasants, monks, and wanderers who forged their own paths to self-defense far away from the polished halls of Edo?
Across the broad expanse of rural Japan, where mist clung to the terraces at dawn and the rhythm of wooden wheels creaking along dirt paths marked the passing of each season, a quiet transformation unfolded, one that turned the tools of daily survival into defenders of life and guardians of dignity. In modest villages, far from the prestige of samurai courts and the regulated order of Edo, peasants lived under strict prohibitions that forbade them from bearing swords. Yet danger crept along the same roads they traveled, and disputes rose as unpredictably as summer storms, forcing them to search for protection in the very instruments they used to work the soil. Thus the tonfa emerged from the handle of a millstone, its sturdy shape allowing a laborer to redirect the strike of a bandit's blade with a twist of the wrist. Nunchaku, born from the wooden flail used to thresh grain, developed into a weapon whose rapid, snapping movements confused even trained fighters. And the kama, the humble sickle, sharpened and wielded with fierce precision, extended the spirit of the harvest into the realm of survival. These adaptations did not arise from rebellion, but from necessity, shaped by a resourcefulness woven deeply into the fabric of everyday life. In creaking barns, behind rice storage sheds, and beneath thatched roofs, farmers practiced at dusk, their movements illuminated only by the faint glow of oil lamps. They trained not to conquer, but to endure, refining each strike, block, and pivot until their tools moved with the familiarity of breath. Theirs was a martial art shaped by rough hands and honest labor, where every motion grew from the memory of working the land. When misfortune forced a confrontation, the transformation was immediate. The tonfa became a rotating shield, the nunchaku a blur of wooden arcs, the kama a swift extension of the forearm. The weapons could be devastating, yet the people who used them did so with a caution born of survival rather than aggression, aware that each movement defended families, harvests, and fragile livelihoods. Far from the fields, in the mountain temples where the cold air carried the distant roar of waterfalls and the heavy scent of pine, Yamabushi monks trained with tools that mirrored their austere lives. The ono, a formidable battle axe, seemed out of place among the tranquility of prayer halls, yet for monks who traveled the wilderness alone, it offered the balance between meditation and readiness. Their staffs, carved from resilient hardwood, served both as walking sticks on treacherous paths and as weapons capable of parrying swords with the authority of a seasoned guardian. The monks' movements were deliberate, shaped by rigorous spiritual discipline.
Each swing of the axe or sweep of the staff echoed with the weight of centuries spent seeking harmony between strength and enlightenment. As these diverse traditions grew, they formed a silent network of knowledge stretching from remote settlements to forest monasteries. Each weapon carried the imprint of its origin. The tonfa spoke of grinding stones, the nunchaku of harvested grains, the kama of cultivated fields, the staff of mountain pilgrimages, the axe of temple chores. All bore the same message that even those denied the sword found ways to defend their honor, relying not on sanctioned warfare, but on ingenuity born from necessity. Yet behind all these creations lingered a deeper mystery, one whispered between generations. If the tools of common life could become such powerful protectors, what unseen weapons moved through the shadows of Japan's cities, wielded not by peasants or monks, but by those who lived in the narrow spaces where law, secrecy, and danger converged?
As the lantern-lit alleys of Edo stirred under the deep indigo veil of night, a different kind of martial world awakened, one woven not from the discipline of dojos or the labor of fields, but from the uncertain realm of shadows, where a single breath could decide the fate of a moment. In these cramped quarters, where wooden shutters creaked in the wind and distant footsteps echoed like faint warnings, weapons emerged that bore no resemblance to the gleaming swords celebrated by samurai tradition. They were small, silent, often disguised as everyday objects, and yet capable of turning an ordinary encounter into a dance of sudden peril. Metsubishi, small containers filled with fine powders of chili, ash, or ground minerals, lay hidden in sleeves or hanging from cords beneath robes. A flick of the hand unleashed a cloud that blinded an attacker instantly, leaving him grasping at emptiness as the shadow that threw it vanished into the dark. The weapon required no strength, only timing, an understanding of the fragile space between sight and blindness, action and hesitation. In the bustling heart of the city, the kiseru pipe evolved into a tool of unexpected authority. Crafted at first for the simple pleasure of smoking, its long metal stem became a concealed instrument of defense. During street disputes in pleasure quarters or gambling dens, guards wielded the pipe with practiced efficiency, striking with its reinforced ends or using it to push back an aggressor with a force surprising for an object so commonly carried. The pipe could block, jab, or sweep, its weight balanced perfectly for rapid, controlled movement. Some versions were embellished with small protrusions or thicker guards, silently acknowledging their dual purpose. To a casual observer, the kiseri was a mark of refinement. To those familiar with its hidden function, it was a reminder that danger could hide behind even the most mundane gestures. Yet the shadows held darker arts still. Among silent rooftops and moonlit courtyards, where tiles glistened with night dew and the distant bells marked unsteady hours, assassins and spies, those later romanticized as ninjas, relied on tools that prioritized subtlety above spectacle. Blowpipes carved from bamboo released tiny darts tipped with poisons distilled from plants or frogs, their flight almost inaudible, their impact barely felt before the world blurred. These weapons did not confront the sword, they bypassed it entirely, striking from distances where steel held no power. The philosophy behind them differed from that of the noble warrior, yet it reflected a shared understanding. Intent, not form, defined the weapon, and skill arose from clarity of purpose rather than adherence to tradition. Even city guards, who walked their patrols with carefully measured steps, mastered implements that bridged the worlds of concealment and order. Between their robes they carried truncheons, chains, wooden hooks, or small weighted cords, objects meant to subdue rather than kill. The night demanded such tools, for an escalation to blades would shatter the fragile tranquility of the streets. Their practice halls echoed with the muted thuds of wood against straw targets, the controlled exhalations of men who understood that peace required its own weapons, quiet, quick, and sure. In their movements lay an implicit acknowledgement that violence could erupt anywhere, and therefore the instruments of restraint must remain ever present, but never flaunted. Amid these dim corridors and secret passageways, one truth became unmistakable.
A warrior's strength did not depend on the grandeur of the object he held, but on the resolve and clarity that guided his hand. And yet, as whispers of hidden arsenals drifted through the city like smoke rising from temple chimneys, a final realization emerged. If the world of shadows held such refined tools of control and evasion, what deeper wisdom awaited in the conclusion of these arts, where weapons themselves faded in importance before the understanding of why they were wielded at all?
As dawn crept over the ridgelines of Japan, dissolving the night's deep blues into muted shades of amber and pearl, the long history of hidden weapons revealed itself not as a chronicle of violence, but as a quiet testament to the ingenuity of those who sought strength beyond the sword's glittering edge. Across fields, temples, alleys, and castle towns, weapons fashioned from chains, pipes, tools, and carved wood endured through centuries, not because they enabled destruction, but because they reflected a profound desire to restrain it. The iron links of the manriki-gusari whispered of control rather than fury. The spiraling paths of the kusarigama taught patience more than aggression. The humble farm implements turned weapons reminded their wielders that force grows from necessity, not pride. And in every movement practiced by monks, peasants, guards, and warriors alike, a single thread connected these forms, an understanding that true power lived in discipline, in the ability to stand firm without shattering the fragile balance that held society together. On training grounds where morning mist settled upon wooden planks still cool from the night, the final lessons of these arts echoed between measured breaths of practitioners who approached their weapons with the same calm reverence one might give to a sacred text. There, the chain's weight pressed gently into a palm before rising into fluid motion. The pipe rested against the hand like a reminder of concealed responsibility. The sickle gleamed faintly as if absorbing the soft birth of daylight. Each object spoke of restraint, demanding that its bearer recognize the delicate lines separating protection from harm. Masters of these disciplines understood that the highest form of strength lay not in the decisive strike, but in the moment just before, a moment where intention clarified, where the mind steadied, and where the possibility of peace remained intact. Thus the arts endured not through the glory of battle songs or tales of conquest, but through the quiet persistence of those who practiced them to guard, to stabilize, to prevent the wet crimson of conflict from staining the path before them. Even in eras when swords dominated the imagination of the nation, these humble tools shaped a philosophy that ran deeper than steel, revealing that mastery was not measured by the ornate craftsmanship of a blade, but by the inner equilibrium of the one who held it. The practitioners of chain arts, staff arts, and hidden implements learned to view their weapons not as instruments of fate, but as mirrors, their movements reflecting the quality of their own thoughts, their discipline tracing the boundaries of their own restraint. Through such training, warfare itself seemed to recede, replaced by the measured understanding that the greatest battle a warrior faced was not across a courtyard or within a smoky alley, but within the chambers of his own heart. The weapons served merely as extensions of that struggle, helping him isolate fear, hesitation, and rage, transforming them into clarity. And so, as the light of a new day spread across the tiled roofs of Edo and into the distant villages where farmers resumed their labor, the legacy of these hidden arts settled quietly into memory, not as relics of forgotten conflicts, but as lessons carried forward in gesture and spirit. They remained symbols of harmony between resolve and mercy, precision and calm, vigilance and compassion, proof that even the simplest chain could become a guardian of peace when guided by a steady hand and a controlled breath. For in the end, all these arts converge upon a truth spoken softly through generations. The true strength of a warrior is not in the sword, but in mastering himself, even when he only has a chain in his hands.